why you need to stop judging and start being open-minded. Do you ever notice how fast we judge, like lightning fast? You walk past someone on the street and within a split second your brain has already filed them into a category: rich, poor, friendly, dangerous, smart, clueless, cool, cringe. And the wild part? You don't even realize you're doing it. It's automatic, like breathing, like blinking. Now, here's the kicker. What if that instant judgment is killing your ability to actually understand the world? What if it's keeping you from ever truly living? That's the philosophical rabbit hole I want to take you down today. We live in a world that encourages certainty. People love to say things like, "I know what's right, that's just how it is," or "I've figured it out." It feels good, doesn't it? Certainty gives us control, it gives us identity. But here's a brutal truth. Most of our certainty is just recycled opinions, absorbed from the people around us, the media we consume, the culture we grow up in. It's not that we're thinking, it's that we're conforming to thoughts that have been handed to us like pre-packaged meals. And the moment we judge someone or something, we stop being curious. Judgment is the end of exploration.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Think about that. Every time you make a snap judgment, you're cutting off the possibility of discovery. You're closing the book before the story even begins. You meet someone with a different belief system and you scoff. "Oh, one of those people." You see someone dressing differently and think they're just trying to get attention. Boom. Judgment made, door closed, learning denied. But what if you paused for a second and asked, what experience led them to think this way? What pain, what joy, what path did they walk? Suddenly, judgment turns into empathy, curiosity takes over, and the world opens up. Now, let's go deeper. Why do we judge at all? Psychologically, it's a protective mechanism. Our ancestors had to make quick decisions to survive. Is that rustle in the bush a predator or just the wind? Is this stranger a friend or a threat? Judgment helped us live another day. But in the modern world, those same instincts often misfire. We're not dodging tigers anymore, we're dodging discomfort. We judge because we're afraid to be wrong, afraid to have our worldview challenged. We judge because it's easier to label than to understand. And in doing so, we build invisible cages around our minds. Let me ask you something that might shake you a little. What if everything you believe is only true because you've never allowed yourself to listen to someone who believes the opposite? That's not an accusation, it's an invitation. What if your reality isn't the reality, but just the reality filtered through your own assumptions, fears, and experiences? If that's true, and countless philosophers have argued it is, then judgment isn't just an opinion, it's a self-imposed blindness. This is where being open-minded becomes not just a virtue but a necessity. Open-mindedness isn't about agreeing with everything, it's not moral relativism, it's not being wishy-washy, no. Open-mindedness is the courage to say, I might not have the full picture. It's the strength to hold space for ideas that challenge you, not to destroy your beliefs, but to refine them. Like a sculptor chipping away at a block of marble, every new perspective helps you uncover a truer version of yourself. But here's a twist. Being open-minded doesn't always feel good. In fact, sometimes it feels like your entire identity is being ripped apart. You might feel lost, uncomfortable, even angry. That's normal, that's growth. Because when you become open-minded, you're stepping into the unknown, and the unknown is scary. But it's also where all the magic happens. Every great thinker, every revolutionary idea, every breakthrough in human history came from someone who dared to question the status quo, to look beyond the obvious, to say, maybe there's more to this than I've been told. So let's get super real. When was the last time you listened, really listened, to someone you disagreed with? Not just waited for them to stop talking so you could counter their point, but actually tried to understand their perspective. Because if the answer is, I can't remember, then maybe it's time to ask, what am I so afraid of hearing? We live in echo chambers. Social media feeds us what we already agree with. Algorithms are designed to reinforce our biases, and slowly, without even noticing, we become more convinced, more rigid, more certain. But certainty without curiosity is the death of wisdom, and that's the paradox. The wiser you become, the less certain you are. Socrates, one of the greatest philosophical minds, once said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." Think about that. The smartest guy in the room admitted he was clueless. Why? Because he understood the vastness of what he didn't know. That's humility. That's openness. So let me leave you with a question that might haunt you in a good way. What could you discover? Who could you become if you stopped judging and started asking deeper questions? The illusion of certainty. Why your beliefs might be holding you back from truth. We live in a world obsessed with being right. In debates, in arguments, in casual conversations, there's this underlying pressure to defend our beliefs as if our identity depends on them. And in many ways it does. Our beliefs are the architecture of our mental world. They give us meaning, purpose, and a sense of direction. But here's the philosophical problem. What if the very beliefs that give us comfort are the same ones that limit our growth? What if your certainty is a cage, beautifully decorated but a prison all the same? When we're certain about something, really certain, we stop questioning it. That's the nature of belief. It cements itself into our psyche as truth. But throughout human history, the things we were most certain about were often the things that turned out to be most false. At one point, we were certain the earth was flat. We were certain the sun revolved around us. We were certain that bleeding people cured disease. Certainty, ironically, has led to some of our greatest mistakes. So why do we still cling to it so tightly? Because certainty feels safe. It's a psychological security blanket. It tells us who we are, what's real and what's not. It gives us a script to follow when life feels chaotic. But here's where philosophy throws a wrench into that comfort. Certainty is often just a story we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of not knowing. And not knowing, being in that space of ambiguity, doubt and openness, that's where true understanding begins. Consider this. Every time you double down on a belief without examining why you believe it, you risk becoming intellectually lazy. You stop engaging with the world as it is and start filtering it through a lens of assumptions. You become a prisoner of your own mind, locked inside a worldview that might have been inherited, not chosen. And if you never question your beliefs, are they really yours? Or are they just mental hand-me-downs passed to you by parents, teachers, social media, or culture? Let's get deeper. Have you ever changed your mind about something important, really changed it? Like a belief you once held passionately, only to later realize you were completely wrong. That moment, if you've had it, is terrifying and liberating all at once. It's like the ground beneath you shifts, but suddenly you see more clearly. That feeling is the collapse of false certainty, and while it's uncomfortable, it's also a sign that you're evolving. And isn't that the point of life? To evolve, to become wiser, more open, more aware? But evolution doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens at the edges, in the friction between opposing ideas, in the tension between what we think we know and what reality is trying to show us. The philosopher Alan Watts once said, "Belief clings, but faith lets go. Belief is about grasping to ideas for stability, but faith, true open-minded faith, is about embracing the unknown, trusting that there's value in the mystery." So ask yourself this uncomfortable but powerful question: what belief do I hold so tightly that I've stopped listening to anything that challenges it? And then ask, what would happen if I just loosened my grip for a moment? Not abandoned the belief, not rejected it outright, but simply held it more lightly, allowed it to breathe, allowed it to be questioned. Because in that space of questioning, you might find a deeper truth hiding behind the one you've always accepted. In a world that rewards confidence and punishes doubt, it's a radical act to say, "I don't know." But "I don't know" is where all true knowledge begins. It's where curiosity lives. It's where humility opens the door to insight. And the irony is, the more open you become to being wrong, the more likely you are to get closer to what's right. So let me ask you again, but with greater weight, what might you discover about yourself, about others, about life itself, if you stopped clinging to certainty and started exploring what you've always avoided? The power of curiosity. How openness unlocks a deeper, richer life. There's something sacred about curiosity. It's not just a mental itch or a passing interest. It's a force, a drive, a hunger woven into the fabric of our consciousness. When we're truly curious, we're not trying to win arguments, prove ourselves, or defend our identity. We're simply open to learning, feeling, transforming. And that openness is what makes life infinitely more meaningful. The irony? Most of us are trained out of curiosity the moment we're told there are right answers, that questioning too much is dangerous, or that certain topics are off limits. We're conditioned to believe that curiosity is a luxury, when in reality it's survival for the soul. Think of how children approach the world. Everything is new, everything is worth exploring. They touch, taste, question, and wonder. They ask why 100 times, not to be annoying, but because they're trying to understand the machinery of existence. Somewhere along the way, though, we stop asking. We trade our questions for routines, replace wonder with certainty, and without realizing it, we begin to live smaller, more predictable lives. But what if we could return to that childlike wonder, not in naivety, but in wisdom? What if curiosity wasn't something we grow out of, but something we grow back into? When you're curious, life expands. Conversations become more than exchanges of opinion. They become opportunities to see through someone else's eyes. Even conflict transforms. Instead of reacting in judgment or defensiveness, you start asking, why do they see it that way? What truth might I be missing? Curiosity is the beginning of empathy. It's the antidote to division. And in a world increasingly fractured by ideology, tribalism, and rigid identities, curiosity might just be the most radical act of all. But let's be honest, curiosity isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it leads you into uncomfortable truths. It forces you to confront biases, assumptions, and contradictions within yourself. It opens doors you didn't even know existed, only to show you how little you truly understand. But that's the beauty of it. Curiosity doesn't promise comfort, it promises growth. It promises that the more you explore, the more layers you'll peel back, the more intricate and astonishing reality becomes. And isn't that what we're really after? Not just survival, not just validation, but depth? Here's the paradox. The more curious you are, the less life fits neatly into categories. People become too complex to label, ideas become too nuanced to dismiss, and suddenly, judgment feels like a poor substitute for understanding. You begin to realize that judgment is a shortcut, a lazy substitute for the long, rich process of truly knowing. And in that realization, you start to live differently. You pause before reacting. You listen with the intent to understand. You ask questions not to dismantle, but to explore. So, here's a challenge. The next time you feel the urge to judge, to label, dismiss, correct, pause, take a breath, and ask instead, what don't I know about this? What perspective have I not considered? What might this person or situation be trying to teach me? In that moment, you're not just choosing curiosity, you're choosing to evolve. You're choosing to be awake in a world that often sleepwalks through assumptions. And maybe, just maybe, that one act of curiosity will ripple outward. Maybe it will change how you relate to others, how you see the world, how you see yourself. Because at the end of the day, curiosity isn't just about asking better questions, it's about becoming someone who's open enough, humble enough, and brave enough to live in the questions. Beyond judgment, becoming the kind of person the world needs most. It's easy to think that the world needs more intelligence, more innovation, more people who are right. But look around. We have more access to information than ever before. We're drowning in data, surrounded by opinions, constantly plugged into a global conversation. And yet, we're more divided, more anxious, more disconnected than we've ever been. So maybe the problem isn't a lack of knowledge, maybe it's a lack of wisdom. Maybe what the world actually needs is more people who refuse to judge too quickly, who listen deeply, who remain open even when it's hard. People who don't just react, but reflect. People who can hold space for complexity, for paradox, for the messiness of being human. Because here's the truth. Judgment is easy, it's a reflex. It gives us a rush of superiority, a hit of certainty. But it's shallow. It doesn't require understanding, it doesn't require effort, and it certainly doesn't require love. Open-mindedness, on the other hand, is hard. It means staying in uncomfortable conversations. It means admitting when you're wrong. It means being willing to change, even when it shakes the foundation of your identity. But that's what makes it powerful. Judgment builds walls. Open-mindedness builds bridges. We're living in a time where almost everything is being polarized. Politics, culture, even basic facts. People aren't just disagreeing, they're dehumanizing. They're reducing each other to hashtags, to stereotypes, to enemies. But what if you could be the kind of person who disrupts that pattern? Not by yelling louder, but by listening deeper. Not by proving you're right, but by showing that you care enough to understand. That's not weakness, that's leadership. That's the kind of strength the world is starving for. And this isn't just about being nice or agreeable. This is about embodying a deeper level of consciousness. When you stop judging, when you start listening, when you open your mind, you become more than just a person with opinions. You become a mirror, a student, a teacher. You become someone who can meet life as it is, not as you wish it to be. You become someone who draws people in, who makes them feel seen, heard, and valued, because you're not projecting. But let's bring it even closer to home. What happens when you stop judging yourself? Because that's often where it starts. Most of us are walking around with an inner critic so loud it drowns out everything else. We judge our past. We judge our failures. We judge our feelings, our thoughts, our dreams. And then we wonder why we judge others so harshly. You can't give others what you haven't given yourself. So maybe the path to being open-minded begins with being open-hearted. To your own humanity, to your mistakes, to your growth. Imagine what would change if you treated every moment, every person, every challenge as a teacher. Imagine what would shift if you walked into each conversation not thinking, "How can I win?" but "What can I learn?" That's the mindset that changes lives. That's the energy that heals relationships. That's the posture that turns strangers into allies and enemies into teachers. And yes, it's hard. It takes humility. It takes self-awareness. It takes courage. But the reward is immeasurable. Because in the end, being open-minded isn't about abandoning your values. It's about embodying them more deeply. It's about realizing that strength isn't in how loudly you assert your truth, but in how gently you can hold space for someone else's. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't just speak wisdom, but lives it. So let me leave you with one final question, one that cuts to the core of what it means to be human in this moment. Are you living to prove you're right, or are you living to understand what's true? That one question could change everything.